significant change of the ecosystem, including sea level rise, and also we are facing more extreme weather events such as hurricanes and heat waves. And because of the change in habitat, many plants and animals are at risk of extinction. Greenhouse gases are natural components of our atmosphere which is capable of trapping the heat from sunlight. This is known as the greenhouse effect, which is an important phenomenon that keeps our Earth warm to allow life to thrive. However, the problem is that over the past decades, human activities have produced an overwhelming amount of greenhouse gases, which disrupt the Earth's fine energy balance. Examples are chlorofluorocarbons from the use of aerosols and carbon dioxide from combustion of fossil fuels. These greenhouse gases are different in their ability to trap heat, what we call the global warming potential. Among the various greenhouse gases, CO2 is the most abundant one, and so is considered to be the most contributive member. Because carbon dioxide is so important, it is chosen as a common language to quantify the environmental impact of human activities. The technical term is called the carbon footprint, which is expressed as the amount of CO2 equivalent produced. The method we use to calculate carbon footprint is called the life cycle assessment, which is a cradle-to-grave analysis summing up the amount of CO2 produced at each successive step from raw material extraction to disposal. On the other hand, carbon footprints could also be viewed from a personal or corporate level by adding up the carbon produced in electricity generation, heating and cooling, transportation, food and equipment. This topic is so relevant to us because climate change could cause significant health consequences. These include tropical infections, pollution-related diseases, nutritional problems, casualties due to natural disasters, and disease related to extreme temperatures such as heat stroke. The World Health Organization estimates that climate change could cause 250,000 additional deaths annually between the year 2030 and 2050. The Paris Agreement was a major step forward in the human history of environmentalism. Signed in the year 2015, it was an international treaty on climate change adopted by over 190 countries, including Egypt. The primary goal was to limit the global temperature rise in this century to 2 degrees Celsius and if possible to less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. To achieve this, we need to reduce our carbon emission by 45% by 2030 and reach carbon net zero by 2050. It also fostered international collaboration in finance, technology, and capacity building. Healthcare is no exception when it comes to carbon reduction, but we must first understand the scope of the problem. In fact, healthcare sector is a key contributor of carbon footprint, accounting for 4.4% of total greenhouse gases emission. If the healthcare sector were a country, it would be the 5th largest emitter worldwide. On the other hand, among the different units and subspecialties of a hospital, endoscopy unit is the 3rd highest waste generating department due to the high case throughput, multiple non-renewable waste streams, and also resource heavy decontamination. And it's also estimated that each endoscopy bed day creates approximately 3 kilograms of waste. Apart from the solid waste, electricity also accounts for 30% of environmental impact of operating room-based surgery. You may find these figures a bit abstract, so let's put things into perspective. What actually accounts for the carbon footprints of endoscopy service? First of all, like the endoscopes, endoscopic accessories, miscellaneous waste such as PPE, as well as medications. On the other hand, there is also something intangible and outside the endoscopy room, like the infrastructure, transportation, education, and administration. If we take a closer look into each endoscopic procedure, we can see that it actually generates a lot of waste, including PPE, glove, suction catheter, packaging, and also plastic bottles. And as mentioned above, energy consumption is a key contributor of operating room-based surgery. So guess what is the most energy consuming part of a daily operation of endoscopy room? It is actually the room lighting, followed by endoscopy machine and wash machine. It is undeniable that what we are doing is causing a huge environmental footprint. There is really a need for mitigation strategies. The concept of green endoscopy was proposed. It refers to the implementation of sustainable practices in endoscopy service, such as reducing waste, conserving water and energy, and promoting environmental stewardship. The goals of green endoscopy are to reduce carbon footprints and promote environmental sustainability on one hand, and to provide high quality and safe endoscopic care on the other hand. The key principles of green endoscopy also follows the 3 Rs, including reducing, reusing, and recycling. Endoscopists have come up with different ways to reduce their carbon footprint at work. Amongst the 3 Rs, reduction is the logical and perhaps the most at risk. Alternatives. Along with these are some innovative thoughts on reusing, such as reusing unused endoscope, use rechargeable batteries, and setting up reusable sharp boxes. There is also potential room for recycling like novel plastic recycling schemes and water reprocessing. Increasing awareness and emerging evidence has led to a change in the field. Last year, the ESGE and BSG have both published positional statements on environmental sustainability of endoscopy. These guidelines provide a lot of measures to trim down the carbon emissions associated with endoscopy. Though the positional statements were huge steps forward, we still face a lot of challenges. First of all, as stated in the ESGE paper, the environmental impact of endoscopy service is poorly assessed. GI endoscopy is characterized by considerable yet variable amounts of single-use items, and unfortunately, there is only scarce information provided by most manufacturers regarding the exact components and environmental impact of each instrument. In fact, most of the environmental figures I presented earlier are based on indirect estimates and heterogeneous assumptions. The reason behind this is likely multifactorial, including lack of interest from manufacturers, lack of awareness from healthcare workers, and difficulties in conducting formal life cycle assessment. The implementation of green endoscopy may raise other concerns from a clinical standpoint. For example, reusing instruments may lead to more infection, and limiting procedure or endoscopic accessories may jeopardize patient care and clinical standard. On the other hand, reduction in procedure and limitation of PPE usage may reduce training opportunity. Cost is another important consideration in healthcare. This is perhaps more neutral because the investment of some groundwork may be cost-saving in the long run. Because of the complex interplay between these factors, there is really a strong need to understand the practicability and acceptance of green endoscopy among healthcare workers. Without this important information, the proposed action points are only ideas that cannot be actualized. For that, our group conducted a survey among endoscopy staff in the Asia Pacific region. It was an online survey conducted from July to August this year, targeting healthcare workers working in endoscopy units. It contained 53 items covering demographics, details of participants' work, the perception on green endoscopy, as well as the acceptance of different carbon reduction measures. Overall, we included 259 subjects from 17 countries or regions. We found that green endoscopy is well received among healthcare workers, with 80% of participants agreeing that it should be incorporated. However, the understanding of the topic is generally inadequate, and only one-third of participants being cognizant reportedly. What is more, existing green endoscopy guideline was reported by a minority of respondents only. We were happy to find that about half of the participants were already practicing carbon reduction measures at work, but there is certainly room for improvement. We further performed regression analysis to identify the factors associated with the acceptance of green endoscopy. We found that the only factor associated with an increased agreement to green endoscopy was the understanding of the issue, with an odds ratio of more than 3. Other than this, the other baseline demographics like sex, age, occupation, as well as other factors like weekly number of endoscopic procedures were not identified as significant factors. We also included 22 ways of carbon reduction. This diagram showed the acceptance of different measures in a descending order. Overall, some of the measures were highly supported, including energy and paper saving, procedure reduction, waste recycling, staff education, and limiting single-use duodenoscopes. However, some of the previously proposed measures were rather controversial, in particular those aiming to reduce intra-procedure carbon footprint, like reducing endoscopic accessories and reducing histology requests. I hope that these results could serve as a guide to policymakers and stakeholders in where to begin green endoscopy. In the next section, I'll discuss some of the carbon reduction measures that are more embraced by healthcare workers. Energy saving is something that could be done and should be done shortly in our daily practice. Examples are to turn off electrical appliances during prolonged break time, lights off at night, resetting thermostat, and using energy-efficient lighting and devices in future procurement. This not only improves the environmental impact but also brings about additional benefits of cost saving. In the long run, hospitals should also explore the incorporation of natural lights and use of renewable energy. With the wide establishment of electronic patient record, paperless healthcare is another area that could be achieved in the near future. In fact, the endoscopy center is a perfect setting to adopt a paperless policy due to the plentiful clinical information and images involved. Examples are digital patient information and electronic endoscopy reports. My center is already doing this, and overall this is very well received. Apart from environmental benefits, it can also make information more reproducible, increase patient acceptance, and save costs in the long run. Recycling is also highly supported. Although this is ubiquitous in our daily living, this is not the case when it comes to healthcare. Endoscopy wastes are often handled inappropriately and materials are rarely recycled. In fact, around 20 to 30% of endoscopy waste are recyclable. Examples are the packaging materials, which typically consist of paper and plastic. A simple way to do it is to set up recycling boxes in endoscopy units. But of course, staff education will be very important for the successful recycling. To ensure an effective recycling program, we should also collaborate with local waste management providers to ensure the recycling capabilities and waste management infrastructure. At my center, recycling boxes are already in place to collect the paper and plastic intra-procedurally. In the month of August this year, we recycled over 380 kg of paper and over 80 kg of plastic out of 1,300 endoscopic procedures, which would otherwise be sent to incineration or landfill. Reduction of a necessary procedure is perhaps the most important and effective way of reducing environmental impact. First of all, we need to ensure that the indication of endoscopy is correct. Previous studies have shown that over 50% of referral for upper endoscopy and colonoscopy are inappropriate. Also, over-surveillance has been reported for some GI disorders like colonic polyps and Barrett's esophagus. And by ensuring a correct indication, it could also reduce healthcare costs and avoid procedure risk. Secondly, triaging of waiting lists and cancellation of procedures have been proven to be feasible during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it worth further exploration in the long run. And we occasionally come across patients who are inadequately prepared so that they need to return for the same procedure on another day. This has duplicated the environmental impact and added extra burden to the already overloaded healthcare system. A proper patient education and measure as simple as a gentle reminder before the procedure may already make a difference. Furthermore, since transportation is the most significant contributor of carbon emission for outpatient procedures, simple measures such as combining bidirectional endoscopy to same day may already cause a significant carbon reduction. Intuitively, the use of non-invasive modalities instead of endoscopy may reduce the carbon footprint. However, the environmental benefits should not be assumed, and we need to be aware of the J-Fon's paradox, whether increase in efficiency may lead to a higher resource utilization. Such diagnostic modalities should only be used under endorsed indication by clinical guidelines. Yes, single-use endoscopes have been developed due to concern over endoscope-associated infection. This is particularly relevant for duodenoscope because of its complex tip design. However, studies have found that actual colonization rate was very low after proper reprocessing of endoscopes, and contamination rarely translates into actual infection. In other words, the theoretical benefit of infection risk actually comes at a significant financial and environmental cost. It is estimated that the CO2 emission is at least 20 times as much as reusable endoscopes, and 96% of the CO2 emission comes from production of the single-use endoscope. Therefore, we need to balance the clinical, environmental, and societal costs in considering the use of these single-use items. The ESG and BSG both recommend that single-use endoscopes should be restricted to selected cases only. In the context of duodenoscope, the use of disposable elevator caps might be a more sustainable alternative. Because the demand for endoscopy tends to increase year on year, we must ensure the procedure we still perform are as efficient as possible. There is a lot that we have to do in the days to come. First is about education. We need to increase the awareness and
Thank you, Dr. Hu. You are with us online. Can we ask you
Hello,
questions?
yes. Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You hear me?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your interesting lecture about green endoscopy. Any questions or comments? First of all, I would like to ask you a question about the principle you are promoting. Don't you see that it's difficult to carry out what you mentioned to us, especially, and now we have many industrial products, including disposable accessories, disposable endoscopes, and all endoscopic techniques nowadays are used with carbon dioxide inflation. Do you think that we can avoid this? How can we avoid this?
I think it's important to strike a balance because I fully agree that nowadays the endoscopic accessories are mainly single use. But actually, I think for green endoscopy, we still have a very long way to go. It's not that we can change from not green to green from tomorrow onwards. It actually requires a lot of participation from different parties, including endoscopists ourselves, and also the industry and the institution. Actually, some policy change is definitely needed. And in the long run, I think industry should definitely also engage in the green endoscopy by providing environmental labeling and designing new instruments that are more environmentally friendly.
Dr. Hu, you are recommending limiting the endoscopic procedures. We should omit the unnecessary procedures. If we can do dual endoscopic examination, we can do it in the same day. You'd like to recommend everything should be electronic regarding the reporting, the communication with the patient, preparing the patient. I think this can be done, but how much about its cost? Do you think that it's cost?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? The connection is not very good.
The cost of your recommendations.
Oh, the cost. Actually, we are already doing it in our center. All our endoscopy report are already electronic because we have the electronic photo capture system. And I think for the cost, some of the groundwork would actually require some investment at the beginning. For example, setting up some electronic photo capture system. But in the long run, this is definitely cost saving because first of all, we can reduce paper and we can reduce the administrative cost and also reduce the storage need. Yes. And for the other what you mentioned, the combining bidirectional endoscopy to same day, I think this is quite simple, and we're actually already doing this.
Okay, Professor Hu, would you think that in poor countries like our country, the reuse of the single-use accessories after proper sterilization, would you think this is considered to be a recycling approach?
Thank you for your question. From our center, actually, we only recycle those non-biohazard materials. For example, those packaging materials, which typically consist of paper, cardboard, or plastics. For recycling of the materials that are used by patients, actually, this is not we advocate at this time point because I think definitely there is concern on the infection and the clinical standard. And but I think in the long run, maybe there can be some changes from the industrial point of view. There may be more development on the future endoscopic accessories that are maybe reusable, etc. But I also agree that a total elimination of carbon footprint is not feasible and not what we are aiming. We are advocating a reduction in carbon footprint rather than an elimination of carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hu. It was very interesting to know what's meant by green endoscopy, but still it's a long journey. And I'm sure that we have to do a lot of things to reach to green endoscopy. The last question, do you think that the instructions you told to us will be reflected on the rate of infection from reuse of endoscopes or accessories?
Thank you for your question. It is actually very relevant. And as I mentioned in the video, sorry that maybe the video was a bit, I mean, the volume is too small and you may not able to hear it very clearly. And actually, we did a survey on that, and the intra-procedure measures to reduce carbon footprint is really controversial. And personally, I also agree that that would have some concern regarding the infection rate. So whether or not to adopt these carbon reduction measures inside an endoscopy procedure, I think really need to be carefully gauged, and also depends on the local culture as well. And I think personally, I would support to reduce the unnecessary procedures. But regarding how we do a procedure, like how much gauze we use, how many biopsy forceps we use, I think it's really based on the individual discretion of endoscopists. And I think a total elimination of carbon footprint is impossible.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hu. Next time we'll see you in Alexandria. Best wishes.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Nice day. Thank you.